everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm sure you saw in yesterday's video we finished taking apart the EJ that we're building for the Dirtbag STI back there, and I mentioned in the end of yesterday's video that I was going to make this video and I was going to show you guys. I've spent a couple hours here speccing out this engine, and I just wanted to show you guys why in my opinion Subaru makes an inferior engine. And I'm not, like, when I say that, guys, I'm not ripping on Subaru. They know what they're doing. This is engine building 101. This is like the basics. I'm not getting in anything super detailed. I'm just like the basics of building any engine. You know what I mean? If I was building a Briggs & Stratton lawnmower engine, I would follow these simple steps. And Subaru doesn't. And this is why so many guys have the problems that they have. I'm constantly hearing about, you know, obviously I had a lot of friends with Subarus. Ringland failure is what happened to this engine. Rod knock. I mean, we've all seen the memes. There's a lot of them out there. And now that I've taken this engine apart, I'm going to show you exactly why those things happen, and what I think, in my opinion, Subaru's doing on purpose, because Subaru has such a huge fan base. There's so many, especially the young guys out there. They love the all-wheel drive. They love the boxer engine. They love Subaru. Subaru is definitely in the car scene. It's one of the more popular cars. You see them everywhere. So I'm going to show you what Subaru is doing, and they're doing it on purpose because they could fix this very, very easily, and they're choosing not to. So I'm going to go over a couple stats with you. I'm going to show you exactly what they're doing to their engine, and why I think that they're doing it on purpose. So first thing I'm going to get into is the ring, the end gap for the ring. So this engine here, right, this is it here. It had the ringland failure. This is it up here at the top. You can see a side of the wall there blowing out, and the ring itself is broke. That ring broke here on the ringland and over here, and that piece of ring kind of busted off. Typically when you're building an engine, you want the bottom ring and the top ring 180 degrees from each other. I'm going to say this is the top of the piston. The bottom of the ring 2 gap was right down here at the bottom. I'm going to say that ring gap was right in the middle there. And what happens is when you gap a ring, okay, what happens is as your engine expands and that ring, so here I'll see if I can explain it better. This is, let's say this is the ring gap here. You gap that ring, and when your engine is at temperature, and it's at operating temperature, this ring gap closes. Now this ring gap is really important because the higher boost you run, or the more power you're running, the more everything inside of your engine expands. I've talked previously about when you're building a high horsepower engine, everything in there kind of expands and moves a little bit, and you need room to just let things kind of flex. Well, rule of thumb, and I'll show you, just, I pulled the one out of, I think these are, I can't remember if this was my Pistons or if this was another car. I built a lot of engines. They're all basically the same. So I will show you what I'm talking about here. Okay? Right here, you can see up across the edge here what your engine should run, and down here it gets into boost, and it's got low boost and high boost and medium boost. And then over here, it's got your top ring. Now I'm only going to get into the top ring. I did some of the bottom rings. They're the same. Okay? But when you build it too tight and you don't give that ring enough room, it pushes together, and then what happens is this. So what happened is here, the ring got pushed together. He was running a little too much boost, or too aggressive of a tune maybe. And that ring pushed together, and because it's got nowhere to go, it pushes upwards and it blows out this ringland. Okay? Now, couple things that I think Subaru does poorly. This is out of the 2J that's going in this is the old piston out of the 2J that we're building for the Supra. Okay? Let me grab my mic. My vernier. So this top ringland on a Subaru engine is right at 4.5 mils. Now, I know that when you're looking at it, especially from the side, and I don't know if you guys can get in there, it looks like it's not too bad as far as the thickness goes. The problem is that when you turn that around, you can see right here, this piston dishes down. So the reality is inside of this, where it dishes down to the outside of that ring, is not very deep. Now, for example, that there is right at 4.5 inches. The Supra, sorry, let me put this piston down. So that's that one. That's 4.5 thou. The Supra, I'm just trying to find that ring gap so I can get my vernier in the ring gap. It's right at 8 mils. And I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's 8 mils. Okay? This ringland, this top ringland, it is a boosted application, so I mean you want to obviously have a strong engine. The ringland on this piston here is almost double of what it is on the Subaru. So that's problem number one. Now, if this was a better piston, if this was a forged piston, you know, you're not going to blow it out like that. You're not going to have those problems. I feel like they could have lowered it down just a touch, giving a little bit more material there. But now I'm going to show you. Okay, so for the piston rings, okay, our starting point, and when I say a starting point, I say it because every engine builder is different. So guys that build engines all the time, I gapped my rings in my Mustang to a custom gap. I didn't use the manufacturer's recommendations because it's only a starting point, and I knew I was going to kind of be in the middle of, you know what I mean, medium boost. So I kind of adjusted myself to be in that range, and I adjusted it. But for those of you that are building a boosted engine, rule of thumb is 5.5 thou per inch of bore. That's the size of your cylinder, the size of this piston, right? Which is almost 4 inches. It's 3.9. Or I should say, it's just shy of 3.9. It's 3.865. But the cylinder wall, obviously with a couple thou in there, clearance, it's about 3.9. For me, now, low boost is considered anything less than 15 pounds of boost. So anything less than 15 pounds of boost, it would be 5.5 thou per inch of bore, and we've got here, let's see here, this is almost 4 inches. It's almost a 4-inch bore. It's like 3.9 inches. Okay. For your medium boost, right there. So there's right there. There's your mild boost, up to 15 pounds, 5.5 thou. For medium boost, 15 to 30 pounds, 7 thou. For high boost, anything over 30 pounds, 8 thou. Now again, this is just a reference. This is just a starter point. This is Manly. I use a lot of Manly stuff in all the engines I build. This is a starting point. Okay? So, excuse my handwriting here, guys. At 3.9, the bore, and it's, like I said before, it's like 3.885, but 3.9. At 5.5 thou, the end gap should be almost 22 thou of an inch. For 7 thou, which is medium boost, it should be almost 27.5 thou. And for high boost, it's 31, just over 31 thou. Unfortunately, I've squared these off already. Sorry, there's the micrometer there. I've already squared these off. I didn't get the top ring in this one because this is the cylinder. That's this piston that blew apart here. Okay? But this one here, you can see how tight that is. This is 12 thou. See if I can get that to focus better for you guys. This is a 12 thou feeler gauge. The 12 thou feeler gauge does not fit in to that gap. It fits in, I use 12 thou because this one over here, which is the biggest one, right there, and I got to push it in a little bit, it's about 11.5 thou, guys, if I had to guess. I can kind of squeeze the 12 thou in there, but then it moves the ring a little bit. So these cylinders, for low boost, and when I say low boost, sorry guys, for low boost, now I don't know what Subaru's run stock, it's probably close to the 15 pounds. At minimum, these end gaps should be 22 thou of an inch to run a reliable boosted engine at 15 pounds or less. One was 9, this one here was 9 thou, this one here is about 10.5 thou, and this one here is the one I just showed you, it's probably 11.5. I can stick a 12 thou gauge in there, but it moves the ring a little bit. There's no way that Subaru, I know that Avery in his 18 STI, he's got the access port, I think he's running 18 pounds of boost. That's almost 27 thou of an inch end gap, and they're 10 thou of an inch. It's like a third of what it should be. So that's why you guys are getting the ringland failure that you're getting, is because that end gap is so unbelievably tight. Like 9 thou of an inch is the smallest one. 9 thou should be 27. It's 33% of the gap that should be there. And it bothers me that they do that, because the loss of power by having a little bit open ring gap, you know, people are like, oh, you're going to get blow by. An extra 3 or 4 thou of ring gap, you're not going to get blow by. It's not going to cause any problems. That's why the crankcase has ventilation, is for pressure that gets in there. They could have made those rings 25 thou, and it would run a lot better. Making them at 9, 10, 11 thou, those ends are butting together, and then it's got nowhere to go but up, and it blows that ringland out, and you have ringland failure. That's problem number one, Subaru. You knowingly, you should be opening those ring gaps up to at least 5 thou per inch of bore, not 2 thou per inch of bore. Okay? That's problem number one. Problem number two. Over here, okay? Now I've got 2 of these. I've kind of got my tool set up. I've already done the math on everything. And you know, I've already spec'd it all out before I made this video. So 2 of these are taking apart. You can see they're taking apart here. These 2 here, I've put back together, and I've torqued them down because they're the 2 better rods. This one here is apart, okay? When it comes to your crank and your rod bearings, so these are your main bearings, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These ones here, the 2 on the outside and the 2 on the back side here, those are your rod bearings. Now, rule of thumb, again, this is just kind of like a beginning point, is 1 thou for every inch of bore. So this is, let me see here, I've already written it down. There we go. So this is 2.3625 inches. This is 2.048 inches for the rods. Now, for the rods, basically you're going to want 2 thou of clearance. This is a standard. So when I talk about opening up the tolerances, guys, I'm going to open all these up. So for this here, typically you would want about 2 thou of clearance. For these here, I mean, 2.5 would be healthy, in my opinion. 2.2, 2.3 thou would be standard. I mean, 2 thou you could probably get away with if you're running a real thin oil like these guys do, like, you know, a 520 or a 020 or something. Which is why I think a lot of these guys do what they do, these engine manufacturers, because they want to run really thin, cheap oil. So, this here, 2 thou. This is 2.048. You could say 2 thou is what you're wanting inside of there. Okay? So I've already gone ahead. This is micrometer. I've already set it to exactly like that's, I've already got this down in here. So that's exactly what that should be. 2.48. 2.048, I apologize. Okay? So then what I'm going to do is I took my bore gauge. This is a bore gauge, guys. It's not set on 0 there, but, and I apologize, I'm going to set the camera down for a second here to see if I can show you guys what I did and what it means. Okay, sorry here, guys. I'm just going to set that down. Okay, so you can see now my gauge is set to 0 because I've got it inside of my micrometer, and I've got the micrometer set to the rods, and it is set at, let me see if I can get it exactly 0. It's zeroed out. Now each one of that, where it says 45, that's actually half a thou. I know it's hard to read my bore gauge, but I've got it for a couple different reasons. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, and this is only one problem with the bearing that I'm going to show you, not all of the problems with the bearing. Okay, now I'm going to stick this down in here, and again I've torqued these bolts to make sure that everything is where it should be. Okay, sorry for the cameras, guys. I'm trying to do everything one-handed here. So I've got it in there. Now you can see that is less than a half a thou clearance. I should have 2 thou clearance in there. My clearance is about 0.4 thou. Now the problem is, when I take this and I'm going from top to bottom of the rod and I spin it to the sides of the bearings, which you should never measure like this, but I'm doing this just to show you guys, just to prove a point. Okay, it gets even smaller. And again, you guys can't see that. It's like 2.5, 0.25 of 1 thou. So it's very small. This should be up where the 30 is at the top of that bore gauge, okay? Now the reason for that is, luckily for me, I've got this rod taken apart for you. I'm gonna put this up against the wall. Can you see the gap on that bearing? On either side of the bearing, right? See that gap where my finger is? See on the other side? That's because these bearings, when you put them on, okay, they don't even go down all the way. You have to push it down. That means this is squeezing the bearing. There's no clearance, none whatsoever, 0. That pushes down and it pushes onto the rod. See what I'm saying? So like it pushes around like that, and you have to squeeze it on, which is a super piss poor design. Now I will show you, every single rod bearing was making contact. That one was making contact. That one there is making contact. This one here is making contact. Let's see if we can get a better shot there. And this one. What one didn't I show you here? Oh, and this one here. And this one makes contact. Okay? But what I really want to show you is how badly, and I'm sorry for the focus here, guys. It's tough because I'm trying to get up close here. But the contact that it's making, let's see here. Let me see here if I can get this for you guys. The contact that it's making right there, where the bearing is squeezed against the crank, you see that? This is leaving shavings in the engine. It's rubbing real bad at all of the joints. I'll spin that around. Same thing on this side. Again, you can see down here, it's making crazy contact, and they're all doing the same thing. Right in there, hard contact. Okay? This should be, I'm gonna open up these at 2 inches. I'm probably gonna open these up to about 3 thou of an inch. And I'm probably gonna open these up to about 4 thou of an inch to make sure that we've got proper tolerances there. Now, they could be doing this for a couple different reasons. So I'm gonna put the camera back on the stand here. Now, so they could be doing this for a couple different reasons. I don't think they're I think that they're doing it on purpose. They should know how to build an engine. This is a no-brainer. These guys are manufacturers. They obviously know how to spec their engine out. But a couple things. I feel like now is a good time to take the opportunity to explain why I use some of the products that I use. a lot of people use ACR. I want to call them ACR bearings, ARC bearings. I'll throw it up here, whatever the bearing is called. I can't remember what it's called. It's a popular bearing. I myself use either Ej25 or King bearings. King bearings being, in my opinion, a better bearing. The materials and stuff. Ej25 makes a really good bearing too. Ej75, that's what I'm running in the Mustang. They make good bearing too. But I tell people, when you're making or building an engine and your bearings come like this, right? Let me see if I can get, I'll just use these ones here. These are the main bearings. When your bearings come stacked on top of each other, and they're stacked like this, and we've all seen it, this is how bearings come. And they stack them up, whatever, there's 10, 12 of them, and they're shrink wrapped together. What happens when you have a bearing packaged like that is it's pushing together, and it's either pushing some of them out or it's pushing some of the smaller ones in. And when you shrink wrap it together like that and it's all held together and it's tight like that, it misshapes the bearing. This is the heart of your engine. This is what causes your spinning rod bearings and spinning main bearings. It causes friction, loses power. Like the bearings are extremely important to the build of the engine. So when I say like I like using Ej25 or I like using King bearings, it's because they don't come packaged like this. This isn't a good way to package a bearing. It's only my opinion. Again, I know tons of builders that use these guys as things. A lot of those engines builders, what they'll do is they'll put the bearing in, then they'll put it through a honing machine and they'll make sure that the tolerance on the inside is exactly the tolerance they're looking for and it's perfectly round and everything is the way it should be. Most people that are building engines at home don't have that machinery to do that. So they're expecting the bearing to come in good shape and not deformed. This is why you'll always see me, even though I get my engine back from the machine shop. You've heard me before, Doug at Competition Automotive. My opinion, some of the best guys in Ontario to build engines. They're phenomenal at what they do. That does not give me the right to just take the engine or the machining that they've done and throw it together. I'm still going to check to make sure that my piston to cylinder wall clearance is right with the bore gauge. I'm still going to check all of my bearings. I'm going to check my rod bearings. I'm going to check my wrist pins going into the pistons. I'm going to check my piston or my piston ring end gap. Those are the little things that make the big difference between having a high horsepower reliable engine and having a high horsepower ticking time bomb that's going to blow apart. You get 10,000 K on it because, you know what I mean? You didn't check all of the specs, all those little things. Those little things matter. And when you don't do it, you end up like I'm really disappointed with Subaru because mainly because these ones here, these bearings are push on. They're making contact, 100% contact. And when the bearing's making contact like that, one, you're not getting oil the way it should be getting oiled. So it doesn't get oil, it gets hot, friction builds up, you spin a rod bearing, you spin a main bearing, you start causing damage to the inside of the engine. That's what happens to these Subaru engines. Another problem that I see is when you're building an engine, and I mean, I like my tolerances to be exactly what they're supposed to be. I set my tolerance, I want all of my main journals the same, all of my rod bearings the same. I'm very OCD like that. The problem with a Subaru is when you're putting the block together, okay, here on the bottom, these surfaces, you have to put gasket maker in them. I've got to put gasket maker on that because you don't want the water from inside the cooling jackets into the oil inside of the combustion chain, like not the combustion chamber, but the oil pan down beneath. Well, when you're speccing out the engine and I do the tolerances on these bearings, regardless on whether it's 1 thou or 3 thou, when you put gasket maker in there, no matter how hard you torque that down, there's still some material of gasket maker in there that you can't measure. There's no way for me to be able to get in. I can't get in and check it and tell you exactly how thick it is or how. So once the crank is in, I can say I want it at 4 thou and get it close to 4 thou, But once the crank is in, I cannot tell you for certain what the tolerance is or what the clearance is of that crank, because I've added that little bit of gasket maker. That's why I'm going to open this up. I'm going to open up, it's 2.3, almost 2.4 inches. I'm going to open this up to about 1/4 of an inch, maybe just a bit shy, 3.5 thou clearance on the mains. And I'm going to open up the rod bearings, these here. I'm going to open these, should be 2 inches. They're all less than 1/10 of an inch clearance. This is the number, this right here, this bearing problem is why you Subaru guys spin rod bearings. This should be a minimum of 2 thou clearance in between there. In my opinion, a high performance engine, they should have made it 2.5, 3 thou, no problem. So you've got to run a little bit thicker oil instead of a 0.20 or a 5.20 or whatever these things run. I don't know, I didn't look it up, so don't quote me on it. You run a 1030 or a 530 or a 540. You know what I mean? You can run. In my car, I opened up all the tolerances in the Mustang. I've had a couple people ask why I run a GT1 full synthetic 1060 in my car. It's because all of my tolerances have been opened up, and I need to make sure that I've got that layer of film in there. I'm not making contact. I spin the engine out over 8,000 RPM. You know, when I fire it up and the engine's cold, I got like 90 pounds of oil pressure. When it warms up and gets to operating temperature, my oil pressure comes down to about 30, 35 pounds. But as soon as I start driving my car at 2,000 RPM, I'm at 65, 70 pounds of oil pressure. Lots of oil pressure. I know that it's running good. And at full, you know, when we were on the dyno and I'm doing dyno pulls at 8,000 RPM, I've still got 90, 95 pounds of oil pressure. I got lots of oil pressure, making sure that all of my bearings aren't making contact with the crank. This is why Subaru spins so many rod bearings. This is the famous rod knock. Subaru should be ashamed of themselves, because it would literally be a matter of fixing these bearings and opening up to the proper tolerances. They could fix that. They're choosing not to, and I believe, only my opinion, again, who am I? I'm a nobody. In my opinion, they're doing it on purpose, because the aftermarket world for Subaru is so big and it's got such a big fan base. They know that you know, I mean, these guys and girls that love Subarus, they're just going to keep throwing money at them. So this is pretty disgusting from Subaru. Honestly, seeing it, I don't think, like, looking at the tolerances and the clearance of everything, I don't think I would ever buy a Subaru because of this. At least not that I might buy one that I'm going to build, but seeing the tolerances that are in these engines, you know, the ring gaps at a third or less of what they should be. Your bearing tolerances being a quarter of what they should be. This should be 2 thou, and it's 1/2 thou of an inch. 1/2 thou. That is so tight. You know, it's not getting the proper oil. It's not getting the proper lubrication. It's causing way too much friction. You could probably pick up, again, don't quote me on this, guys. I'm just going from previous engines that I've built in my experience. I'll bet you if Subaru opened that up to 2 thou instead of the 1/2 thou that it is right now, and I've spec'd them all out, they're all like that, they could probably pick up 10, 15 horsepower just because you don't have so much friction. This is getting so hot. There's so much friction in there because it's so tight. It's causing a lot of problems. So, like I said before, guys, I will definitely keep you guys posted on what I'm doing to the engine, and when I'm doing the ring gaps and the end gaps, and when I'm doing the bearings, I'm going to show you guys what I make them and how I open them up. But this is disgusting. Subaru should know better than this. These guys are like, they're one of the largest car manufacturers in the world. They build these things. This is out of a 2007 or 2008, I can't remember, STI. This is their high performance flagship engine. This is the creme de la creme for Subaru, and I wouldn't put this in a lawnmower. This is an absolute time bomb waiting to go off, and it's all to do with tolerances and end gaps and clearances. They just haven't done it right. And it's not that they can't do it right, they're choosing not to. That's what's upsetting. Like I said before, the piston, I mean, this here, another thing that I want to say is the piston speed. A lot of guys ask questions. I hear a lot of guys on other videos, not on my videos, but on other videos, I hear guys asking about piston speed, and they're talking about speed. So another common myth is the strain on your connecting rod is when this piston is coming up and it's making all that compression at the top, and that's what's putting all of the pressure on the connecting rod, which is not true. The strain on the connecting rod is stopping and changing directions. When this comes all the way up, and then that rod goes like this, and it's coming up and it stops dead at the top, and then at the speed that it's going has to change direction and pull it back down. It's that change in direction at the speed that it's going that puts so much shock on the rod. That's the shock on the rod, okay? When they talk about piston speed, they're talking about the speed that this piston is traveling up and down, okay? Now, if you de-stroke this engine, let's say I de-stroke this and I made it from a 2 liter, I took it, I think there's a stroking kit out there to make it like a 1.8. Those are very short rods. I can rev this thing to 10, 11, 12,000 RPM because the piston speed is so slow because the rod is short and it's just not, you know what I mean? It's not going up 3.5 inches and coming down 3.5 inches. It's only going up 2 inches and down 2 inches, which changes the speed of the piston. As you can see, there is a significant difference between the 3 liter 2J, obviously there's 6 of these and there's only 4 of these, but there's also a difference in the stroke, okay? This engine has a pretty short stroke. It's not a long stroke in this thing. It's got a big piston. That's a big piston for a 2.5 liter. My 5 liter in the Mustang has a 3.630 piston. This is a 3.85. I think I mic'd it out too. Don't quote me on that again. I'll throw it up here, whatever it is. But the stroke is pretty short on it. Big bore, shorter stroke. You should be able to rev these engines to 7,500, 8,000 safely. You should be able to. Even with this crank, I'm looking at the crank, and the crank looks like it's actually a nice quality crank. But the tolerances are so tight, and the piston rings are the end gaps in the piston rings are so tight that you just can't rev it like that. You can't, rev it to its full potential. And again, this all comes down to Subaru. Like I said before, guys, I should not be able to drop a bearing, right? I shouldn't be able to drop a bearing into the housing and have it fall to the bottom. Like this is, like I said, you can see over here, look at the gap between the bearing and the rod. You know what I mean? It's just sloppy, right? It shouldn't be in there. Like I can move this from side to side. It's hard to see there, guys, but like I shouldn't be able to rock it in there like a rocking chair. It's just a really poor design by Subaru. And for all you guys out there that have Subarus, I'm not ripping on the car. I'm not making fun of Subarus. Like I don't like them. Subarus are great cars. We have a blast in Avery's car. We go out, we thrash around in it. I'll throw it up. I talked to the guy that owned this engine. Jesse got me in contact with him. The guy that had this engine in his car, he brought it to the dyno. It only made 303 horsepower and 325 foot-pounds of torque to the tires. That's what this was tuned to. So it's not a crazy tune. It's not, obviously he tuned it up. That's quite a bit more than factory. But he didn't tune it to 350 horse at the wheels. He didn't tune it like he didn't, he's not running 20 pounds, 25 pounds of boost in the thing or anything. He just put, put an up pipe on it, whatever, a few light mods, and tuned it. And caused ringland failure. And again, this ringland failure, 100%, it's because the ring end gap was so tight. Like, I'm guessing that it's going to be 8 or 9 thou, let's say 10 thou. At operating temperature, the ring gap is touching. So, you start throwing a couple extra pounds of boost at it, and ringland failure. So, again, definitely not ripping on your cars. I love Subarus. They're a fun car. My son was thinking of getting one. That's actually how I ended up with this motor to begin with, is I was going to build it with my son. But then he decided that he didn't want this. He wanted an S2000 or an RX-7 or a little BMW or something like that. So I'm not ripping on Subaru, and it's definitely, the guys with Subarus out there, it's definitely not your fault that Subaru's doing this, but this is probably the poorest quality engine I've ever torn apart, and I've torn a lot of engines apart. This is probably the poorest quality engine as far as clearances and tolerances go inside of an engine that I've ever seen, especially for a boosted application. This engine comes factory boosted. Why they're doing 9 and 10 thou ring gaps, I have no idea. The ring gap on a a 20 thou ring gap on a stock 350 small block that's just naturally aspirated. That's way too tight. The main bearings, too tight. The rod bearings, less than half a thou, not getting oil. You have to push them on, which kind of opens it up a little bit. It's making wicked contact, which leaves shavings in the engine, guys. When that coating comes off, like I said, this bearing shouldn't be brass like that. You know, it should be, the coating should still be on there because there should be a film of oil in there stopping the bearing from making contact with the crank. So I figured I'd make this for you guys. It might explain a little bit more once I start putting this back together and I start showing you some of the tolerances. And like I said, I thought I was going to open them up maybe 50%. So I was thinking, okay, if it's 2 thou, I'm going to open up to 3 thou because we're going to be spinning at high RPMs, high boost level, stuff like that. Now that I see the tolerances that are in there, I mean, I'm going to be doubling, I'm going to be quadrupling a lot of these. Like, I mean, the rod bearings that are half a thou, they're going to be 3 thou by the time I'm done, which is 6 times the clearance. The rings, obviously, I'll show you the ring gap when I get in that. I might go even a little more than 1/8 thou of an inch because we're going to be throwing a lot more than 30 pounds at it, hopefully. So again, instead of 10 thou or 9 thou or 11 thou ring gap, those are all going to be, you know, 32, 33, 34 thou. It's going to be 3 times the end gap on those rings because that's going to be what we need so that this is going to be good, high horsepower, high revving, high boost engine reliably. That's the one key word most people forget about. You always want to build your engine as reliable as possible. I'm a true believer in overbuilding and underdriving. My Mustang, it's built to handle 1,500 horsepower. I'm running it like 1,150, 1,100 because I don't want to push it to the ragged edge. I could go put race fuel in it. I could do a pulley swap, you know what I mean, and take it down to the dyno and run 1,200, 1,300 to the wheels. But now I'm pushing all of my internals to the absolute max, and I don't want to do that. I want to overbuild it, underdrive it. I'm building this. This is getting a manly billet crank. It's getting the best I-beam rods. It's getting the extreme tough pistons. The ring gaps are going to be done right. It's getting the best bearings. It's going to be the best of everything that we can put on it, we're going to put on it. I'm also going to go through and I'm going to smooth out some of the oil galleys because they've got like a real turbulent oil flow to this thing. Like it comes up at 90 degrees and it bends out. When they could have just smoothed that off and had a nice flow, it's going to up the oil pressure, stuff like that. So there's little tips and tricks like that. Again, this is only what I do when I'm building an engine. I'm not telling anybody to go out and build an engine or follow my specs. I'm not telling any of the engine builders out there if they don't do it the way I do it. I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. I'm just saying when I'm building an engine, this is how I build it. I've had pretty good luck. You know, you've seen some of the cars I've built. It makes pretty good power. And the big thing is, it makes power reliably. My Mustang makes 1,150 horsepower. I've already put 15,000 K on the motor. Besides changing some spark plugs, you know, like I blew the rear end out of it now, so I got to do the rear end. Besides changing spark plugs, I've done nothing to it. Oil changes and spark plugs, it runs flawlessly. You know, I'll probably put 50, 60,000 K on it before I take the engine out and freshen it up and make sure to replace some bearings and do that kind of thing. So, I hope that was informative for you guys. I hope you liked the video. If you do like the video, I mean, give it a thumbs up or leave a comment. If you have experience with Subarus and I stated something that is incorrect, please let me know in the comments. And I mean that honestly. I'm always out to learn. The more I know, the more I learn, the better off I'm going to be. So, I mean, I don't take offense to it. If you're saying, hey, no, you're wrong, the reason they do it like this is because, and you've got an explanation on why they do it like that, I would love to hear it because, like I said, it's going to help me when I go back to putting this engine back together if there is something that I'm missing. I don't think there is, but like I said, I'm definitely not a Subaru guy. I'm not a boxer engine guy. I don't know everything there is to know about every engine on the planet. Obviously, nobody does. So if there's something that you can tell me that I'm missing, definitely leave a comment down below. And for those of you that are new to the channel, we are building this EJ for Curtis's Dirtbag STI in the back there. It's going to be high horsepower. We're going to get as much power as we can out of it, throw a whole bunch of boost at it. But the channel is actually about a 97 Toyota Supra that we are building strictly on the votes of subscribers. You guys decide what you want done to it, and we're doing it. It is currently out at Paintworks. It's being held up because they're super busy painting a slide for one of their customers. But it's getting a Veil Side 4509 GTR body kit, one of a kind, the only one in North America. It's getting a 600 or 700 horsepower 2JZ single turbo engine. We still have lots to vote on. I'm just making some other videos on other things that I'm doing around the shop in between making videos for the Supra, because you guys said you wanted to see what was going on. So if you want your chance to win a $150,000 Toyota Supra, hit that subscribe button, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, and we'll see you in the next video.